Good morning, everyone. Webinar. My name is Cherise, and I work with the Endangered Wildlife Trust for the Amphibian program. My colleagues are Dr. Jean Tarrant and Stephen Magwaza. Please can I ask you to please switch off your videos and mute your microphones. And at the end, there'll be opportunities to ask questions. So if you're happy to do that, yeah, please, if we can do that. I'm also going to switch off my video because it might slow down the webinar as we go along. Thanks so much. Okay, so let's start with, what are frogs? Frogs are vertebrates. That means they have a backbone and they belong to the class of amphibians. Amphibians live part of their life cycle live part of their life cycle in water and the other part of their life on land. There are three categories of amphibians. We have frogs and toads, salamanders, and caecilians. The frog's external anatomy, basically they have a body that can be divided into a head, a short neck, and the trunk. And the head consists of brain, mouth, eyes, ears, and nose. And we're going to go through some of the most interesting parts of the frog in the following slides. So yes, one of the most interesting things about frogs is their permeable skin. They are able to absorb water through their skin, so they can drink water, as well as breathe through their skin. They're not able to live in salty water or seawater because of this permeable skin, and they can shed their skin once a week, and then they eat it, gobble it up. As you can see in the video over here, this is actually an American toad, which is busy eating his shedded skin. And they have, their skin also helps with their immune system because it secretes these toxins, and those toxins help to kill off bacteria and mold, which helps to protect them from any disease. Their skins also have chromatophores, which help with their color, and sometimes if a frog is brightly colored, it could mean that they're poisonous or they camouflage themselves. So the chromatophores are actually really important for frogs too. They have not like a normal conventional nose like ours, but they have external nares. You can't see this picture very clearly, but at the top of their snout, they've got these little slits where they're able to breathe in air. And this helps them if they're floating on water. They can stick their snouts out with their air, their external nares to absorb or breathe in air. What's also really cool about frogs is their nictitating membrane, as you can see on this video. It's a special cover for the eye, which helps to protect from dust or debris, protects the eye. It also helps to camouflage the eye, because if predators can see the eye reflecting on any light, their predators actually are able to catch them. But with this special camouflaged membrane, they're able to avoid predator detection. They also have an eardrum, which is like a tympanic membrane, and it's got a little cover there, which stops water or debris and stuff going into the eardrum, but it helps them to hear above and below the water. Yes, their limbs are very, very good. The frog's long and muscular legs are the key to success. If you see this video over here, they use their legs for jumping and swimming, which ensures they can get away from predators and can catch their prey. And if you can believe it, some frogs can jump up to 20 times their own length in a single leap. The webbing in frogs is also very cool, but they have varying degrees of webbing. Webbing helps frogs to swim. Frogs who have webbing and extensive webbing are able to swim faster. The webbing helps to create a bigger surface area in the water. This allows frogs to apply more force in the surrounding water. And as the frog strikes backward with its legs, the webbed foot opens and creating a dam against the water. And this helps them to swim nice and fast. This is an interesting little video for the internal physiology. This is a glass frog, but if you see there, the frog, you can see the intestines and the liver. And yeah, they have basically all the same organs as we do. They've got lungs, which help them to breathe, a heart, which pumps their blood through their system. They have kidneys, which regulate their water, a stomach, the liver, which filters their blood, the intestine, which absorbs the water and nutrients, and then a spleen, which supports the immune system, as well as a bladder and a rectum, which goes together with a cloaca, which helps to excrete or eliminate any wastes produced by the frog. So yes, since they are amphibious, what's interesting about frogs is that they have an interesting life cycle. They start out as eggs, which hatch into fish-like larvae called tadpoles. These grow larger and they feed on algae and bits of plant material in the water. As it begins to metamorphosize, the tadpole grows hind limbs, and both pairs of limbs are complete, and the animal has exchanges gills for lungs. The frog that crawls onto land. The frog then reabsorbs the rest of its tail and continues to grow until it reaches adult body size. So how many frogs are out there? Okay, there are over 8,148 species of amphibians globally. And these can be divided into just over 7,000 frogs and toads. There are 740 newts and salamanders and 240 Sicilians. There are new frog species that are discovered every year. On average, about 147 new species have been described every year for the past 10 years. And 14 of these are actually from South Africa. So where on earth are they found? Frogs are found throughout the world, inhabiting a vast range of habitats. Globally, there are over, as we mentioned earlier, 7,100 species of frogs, and they are found on every continent except Antarctica, because Antarctica is a bit too cold for them, and they are found in almost every habitat type. Typically, frogs can be associated with warmer, moist environments, and species densities are concentrated in the equatorial regions where it's nice and warm. In South Africa, there are about 135 species of frogs, and they're distributed unevenly throughout the South Africa. They range, obviously, according to the environments, because they enjoy warmer, wet climates. You can see along the coastal areas where it's very dark blue, the species richness is much higher there. So yeah, in South Africa, those you can see in the KZN area and the Western Cape area, frogs are more diverse and more populated. So yes, as I mentioned, where do frogs like to live? All amphibians are dependent on moisture and temperature. So larger numbers of species are found in areas that are warm and wet. These are the temperature and rainfall maps for South Africa. So you can see along the coast, again, we matched those up to the previous slide's diagram. You can see where it's nice and warm and where there's lots of rain, frogs are concentrated in those areas. So frog homes, where do frogs, what sort of habitats do they like to live in? You can see from this diagram that forests, flowing fresh water and still open water are the top 3 habitats for frogs. Whereas arid and desert, semi-arid habitats are least diverse for species, least species richness that you can find in those areas. So in generally, forest flowing water is where frogs, high diversity of frogs are found. So let's look at some of the frogs in South Africa that live in these habitats. Forests, for example, there's this bush creeker. A bush creeker is quite interesting. It lays its eggs in the leaf litter of the forest floor. There is no free-swimming tadpole phase. Rather, their entire development is completed within an egg capsule, and tiny little fully metamorphosized frogs emerge about 4 weeks later. And they are also well camouflaged to blend in with the forest floor. This is a kloof frog. Kloof frogs are agile jumpers and strong swimmers, and this enables them to escape easily and hide in rotting plant material at the bottom of pools. They have expanded adhesive toe tips, which you can see, you can actually see in the picture. and these allow easy movement over vertical rock faces and slippery surfaces. You can see the clutch of eggs behind this frog. And these are, once these tadpoles start to metamorphosize, they will drop into the water because they lay these clutches of eggs just above slow moving water. And when they hatch, they're able to then fall into the water and carry on. This is a good example of a frog that lives in freshwater ponds. This is an African clawed frog. Its name comes from their unique feet, as their hind feet are webbed. This makes them excellent swimmers, and which is important for them because they spend a lot of time in the water. But their front legs have clawed toes instead, and these help them to shovel food in their mouths. The desert rain frog lives in the semi-arid arid areas, and they have actually also extensive webbing on their feet, but not to help them swim, but rather it enables them to get traction on loose soil over sand as the frog moves about on the surface of the dunes. This also, they will only come out in the evening where it's a lot cooler and it's not so hot during the day. So why should we care about frogs? Well, for instance, they are bioindicators, and bioindicators are animals and plants that can be used to determine the state of habitats or the health of habitats. Since frogs have permeable skin, they are really good bioindicators. So for example, if there's any negative impact on the environment like water pollution, this may impact on the frog's population size or diversity. So if the population sizes are reduced or the frog diversity has been reduced, then we know that there's something wrong with that environment. And we should then go and investigate what is causing a decline in health in that environment, because whatever happens to frogs will ultimately affect people as well and other living creatures. Frogs are also important in the food chain. They're in the middle of the food chain, which means that they control below populations and they support above populations. So frogs mainly eat insects and like mosquitoes or flies. So if we didn't have frogs, then we would have an explosion of those populations. But they also support animals like snakes and birds. So if we didn't have frogs, then we would see a decline in frogs and bird species that feed off these frogs. Snakes and bird species, sorry. They also have really important medicinal value. You can see there's a few examples of frogs that have provided medicine through the toxins that are secreted to their skin. For example, they're used for painkillers. There's a painkiller that's 2,000 times more powerful than morphine. And we also have frogs that are being researched to block HIV/AIDS transmission. There's frogs that help reduce high blood pressure. There's also frogs that help with ulcers. So when losing frogs, for example, the top right one that you're looking at, if we lose that frog now it's extinct, have other frogs that are going extinct, we might not be able to find out medicinal value from them that could help other people. So that's also another reason why we need to look after our frogs. So what is the situation with frogs? Globally, there are 43% of frogs species are in decline, and in South Africa, nearly 30% of frogs are threatened. Why are they disappearing? Well, one of the main reasons is habitat loss, pollution, overexploitation, climate change, UVB radiation, disease, deformities, invasive species. And all of these together combined are also contributing to the disappearance of amphibians. I'm going to speak about some of these impacts in the following slides. So let's look at habitat loss and pollution. This is quite a good diagram. If you can see in the first one, the forest, if you transform a forest into an urban environment, obviously we're going to lose species, as you can see. So we get some species extinction and decline in populations. And if you, for example, then change your grassland habitat for agriculture, you get species decline and extinction. And what's also interesting is that some frogs that are better adapted for change, they might increase their populations, like the yellow frogs represent, because they're just better suited for that change, or more adaptable. But essentially, we still lose biodiversity and species. Disease is also a reason for the decline. Amphibian chytrid fungus is known to affect over 500 amphibian species and has been directly responsible for causing extinctions of at least 90 species. Then this fungus makes the skin thicker and less permeable, and this results in fluid imbalances, loss of muscle control, and heart failure. And it should be noted, the trade in amphibian species also causes the spread of this disease. Climate change is also contributing to the decline. Climate change predictions across the world suggest that temperature will fluctuate widely, but ultimately the planet is becoming warmer. Amphibians are particularly vulnerable to changes in temperature and rainfall, and as these determine their life cycle. The development of eggs and tadpoles is directly dependent on temperature and water availability. And there are many factors that make up an animal's ideal living conditions. Whether a species can survive in these changes depends on their adaptability. Frogs are usually tied to a very specific habitats and not able to just get up and go. Like a bird does, for example. They can't just move away from the places where they are. As such, they are really susceptible to changes in their environment. Overexploitation of frogs. Okay, so frogs are traded for food, pets, and for medicinal purposes. And as I said earlier, the trade in frogs also spreads the disease among frogs. UVB radiation. Researchers have found that UVB radiation can kill amphibians directly, and this can cause sublethal effects such as slowed growth rates and immune dysfunction that work synergistically with contaminants and pathogens in climate change, and together with climate change can be made worse. So we have to take action. So there's the strategic response to the conservation of species, including frogs, is the inventory of species based on their global conservation status. As you can see over here, the IUCN has got a red list categorization of species, and it can be categorized whether it's extinct, critically endangered, vulnerable, threatened, or data deficient. For example, data deficient means that there's not enough data available to place them in any of the above categories. But this list helps conservation authorities to prioritize conservation efforts. And essentially, these species are also used as flagship species, because by conserving the habitat that this critically endangered frog lives in, for example, you're also able to conserve the habitat for other species that live in that habitat. So it is really quite a useful tool for prioritizing conservation efforts. So what are we doing? Okay, globally, people are taking action to look after the environment and amphibians where they live. In South Africa, the Threatened Amphibian Program, we strive to affect policy and management through biodiversity management plans. We implement meaningful education programs, and we secure habitat through biodiversity stewardship, and we restore habitats where these key species live through the removal of alien invasive plants, for example. But it's also really important that we are all responsible for the care of our environments, and we all have to be part of the solution. So you can also be a part of the solution by educating yourself and others, and to get to know the frogs in your area. You can also sign up to the Frog Atlas program, where you can, if you find a species of frog, you can load it onto the Frog Atlas, and this helps researchers identify populations and ranges and the health of species. You need to reduce our waste footprint, use organic detergents and chemicals that are not harmful for the environments, buy local food, create a frog sanctuary in your back garden. They will really appreciate it if there's a little pond that they can move from one place to the other, because fragmentation of habitats because of urban developments, it creates a problem for frogs to get around. You can adopt your local river or a local forest and clean it up. You can also don't keep frogs as pets and don't eat frogs. If you found this interesting, you can go, we've got online quizzes that you can go and take on habitats, the anatomy and threats and conservation. You're welcome to go and take the quiz and see how you score and see what you've learned. But yes, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed the talk. If you need further information, you're welcome to log on to the Endangered Wildlife Trust website. I've got the link over there. Follow the Threatened Amphibian program and our contact details are there. And as I said, you are welcome to let me send any questions that we won't be able to address today. We'll be able to address through that platform as well. Thank you. So yes, we have our, so I'm just, so we have the chat, so we can, yeah, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask through the chat line, or if you don't have any questions, yes, hold on, there are some questions, yeah. So the crab-eating frog from the Southeast Asia can survive in salty estuarine environments. Thank you, Oliver. We'll note that, thank you. Good. Well, there aren't any questions on the web chat. Thanks very much. Oh, how do we address native amphibian declines in our national reserve, for example? Okay. Well, yeah, I'm not a huge frog expert, but yes, through removal of alien invasive plants and control of pollutions, then we're able to address that, working also with policy and the local conservation authorities is also an option that you can take. But if you want, you can also email me. I can also ask Dr. Jean Tarrant to address that question specifically as well.
Cherise, there's some questions on the Q&A.
Sorry, thanks, Eve. I just got the two. I can only see that. I can only see on the chat. Oh, you want to use some of the slides, you're welcome to. There we are loading educational resources up on the Endangered Wildlife Trust, so you're welcome to go and download our lesson plans, as well as we've got narrated slides that you can make use of as well. Yes, you can use either one. The Frog Atlas map is direct. Thanks for that question. So the iNaturalist will also map and track the frog species, but yeah, you can also use the Frog Atlas. Oh, okay, so a guttural toad, why do frogs' mouths foam when they bite a toad? So the guttural toad has little glands at just behind the eyes of here, which secretes a toxin. And yes, they are a little bit poisonous, but not life-threatening so yes, when they bite into it, that makes their mouths foam. So if you see your dog does have a foamy mouth, you should just go and wash it out. And also, if you're handling a toad, a guttural toad that you find in your back garden, once you finish handling it, you should just go and wash your hands. But in South Africa, we don't have frogs that are deathly poisonous. We've only also got the rubber frog, which is up north, found up north in the northern areas. But again, it's not life-threatening. So we don't have very extremely poisonous frogs in South Africa next to the guttural toad. So yes, we are currently involved with the breeding of the Pickersgill's reed frog with the Johannesburg Zoo and KZN Wildlife. We have bred them in the zoo and then released them in Mount Moreland area and then another site. That's still busy being monitored. You know, it's relatively, you know, it's a new process, so we're trying to monitor how to actually monitor the populations that we release, conclusive, whether it's, you know, how well the population reintroduction process is going from the ex situ conservation. Yes, contact us. Oh, there's Q&A. Oh. Good. Yes, do some frogs fly? It's a good question. I'm not really sure. I wonder if Dr. Jean Tarrant is available. Perhaps she could respond. But if you can email us off our website, I will let you know. And that's Marguerite Miller. Okay. Good. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, then yes, thank you for your time.